The morning of the surgery dawned with a deceptive sense of calm. Sarah had meticulously prepared, following every pre-op instruction to the letter. No food after midnight, no jewelry, a fresh face scrub clean of makeup. She even managed a relatively decent night's sleep, aided by a mild sedative prescribed by her doctor. The surgery itself was considered routine, a minor procedure to correct a deviated septum that had plagued her with sinus infections for years. She envisioned waking up groggy, perhaps a little sore, but ultimately breathing freely for the first time in what felt like forever. Her expectations were simple: a quick recovery, followed by a life unburdened by constant congestion and headaches. She packed a bag with comfortable clothes, a book she'd been meaning to read, and a playlist of calming music to ease the recovery period. Beneath the surface of her meticulous preparation, however, a subtle current of anxiety churned. It wasn't fear of the surgery itself. Dr. Thompson was highly recommended, and the procedure was relatively low-risk. It was more a generalized unease, a nagging feeling that something, however small, might not go exactly as planned. She pushed it aside, attributing it to pre-surgery jitters. After all, everyone feels a little apprehensive before going under the knife, right? She focused on the image of clear, unobstructed breaths, a future free from the constant discomfort that had become her unwelcome companion. That image, she hoped, would be her reality soon enough. The first sensation was a dull, throbbing ache, not in her nose, as she'd anticipated, but encompassing her entire face, radiating outwards from her jaw. She blinked, trying to focus, but the world swam in a blurry haze. The sterile white of the recovery room's ceiling swam above her, punctuated by the harsh glare of fluorescent lights. A low hum filled her ears, a combination of medical equipment and distant voices. Disorientation clung to her like a heavy shroud. She tried to swallow, but her mouth felt strangely restricted. A wave of nausea washed over her, and she squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the urge to vomit. Slowly, painfully, awareness began to trickle back. She attempted to open her mouth to ask for water, but her jaw refused to move. A sharp, unfamiliar pressure held it firmly in place. Panic began to stir. She ran her tongue along the inside of her lips, encountering something metallic and unyielding. Wires. Her jaw was wired shut. This wasn't right. This wasn't part of the plan. The deviated septum surgery was supposed to improve her breathing, not imprison her jaw. The realization hit her like a physical blow, shattering the fragile sense of calm she had clung to before the surgery. Something had gone terribly wrong. This wasn't the groggy, slightly sore awakening she had envisioned. This was something far more sinister, a nightmare unfolding in the sterile confines of a recovery room. The underlying anxiety she had tried to ignore now blossomed into full-blown terror. The cold, sterile reality of the wired jaw slammed against her, suffocating her with a feeling of helplessness. She was trapped, a prisoner in her own body. Her hands flew to her face, tracing the unyielding metal that bound her mouth shut. The wires felt alien, intrusive, a violation of her physical autonomy. She tried to speak, to call out for a nurse, for Dr. Thompson, for anyone who could explain this horrifying situation. But only a muffled groan escaped her throat. The wires acted as a cruel silencer, trapping her words before they could form. Frustration mounted, fueling the rising tide of panic. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring her already distorted vision. She thrashed slightly against the bed sheets, a desperate attempt to break free from the invisible restraints of her own body. Each movement sent a jolt of pain through her jaw, a sharp reminder of her predicament. She focused on breathing, trying to regain some semblance of control. Inhale, exhale, but the air felt thin, insufficient, as if the wires were constricting not only her jaw, but also her ability to breathe. She tried to signal to a nearby nurse, her eyes darting frantically towards her. The nurse, engrossed in charting, seemed oblivious to Sarah's distress. She tried raising a hand, but her movements were weak and uncoordinated. The anesthesia still clung to her, clouding her mind and hindering her motor skills. She was alone, trapped, and unable to communicate. The panic intensified, threatening to overwhelm her completely. She had to find a way to get someone's attention, to understand what had happened to her. Her mind raced, desperately searching for a solution. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the nurse glanced up, her eyes meeting Sarah's panicked gaze. Relief flooded through Sarah, a momentary reprieve from the crushing despair. She gestured frantically at her mouth, her eyes pleading for understanding. The nurse approached, a look of mild concern on her face. "Are you in pain, dear?" she asked, her voice calm and professional. Sarah nodded vigorously, then pointed again at her wired jaw, hoping the nurse would grasp the severity of the situation. The nurse's expression shifted to one of recognition, but not the kind Sarah had hoped for. It was more like, "Oh, that's right, the wired jaw. Dr. Thompson will be around to see you shortly," the nurse said, her tone dismissive. "Just try to relax." Relax? How could she relax? She needed to communicate, to understand. She needed to speak. Desperate, she focused all her energy on forming a single word: help. She pushed the sound through the wires, a strangled, distorted noise that barely resembled human speech. But it was something that it was an attempt. The sound that emerged, however, was not her OWN. It was a raspy, guttural croak, a distorted echo of her former voice. It was alien, unfamiliar, as if someone else was trying to speak through her. A wave of chilling horror washed over her. Not only was her jaw wired shut, but her voice was gone, replaced by this grotesque imitation. The realization was more terrifying than the wires, more frightening than the pain. Her voice was her identity, her means of connection, her way of expressing herself. And now, it was stolen, replaced by something monstrous and unrecognizable. The panic reached a fever pitch, threatening to consume her entirely. Dr. Thompson finally arrived, his presence doing little to soothe Sarah's mounting terror, but he offered a strained smile, his eyes betraying a hint of discomfort. "Sarah, good to see you're awake. A little complication during the surgery, I'm afraid." Complication? That was an understatement of epic proportions. She wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but all that came out was another garbled croak. Frustration choked her. Dr. Thompson continued, oblivious to her inner turmoil. "During the septoplasty, we discovered a previously undetected cyst in your JW. It was quite large and, unfortunately, required immediate removal to ensure proper healing and stability. We had to wire your jaw shut." He paused, as if expecting her to nod in understanding. Assist? Jaw wiring? None of this had been discussed. None of this was part of the plan. And what about her voice? She scribbled frantically on a notepad the nurse had reluctantly provided, her hand shaking uncontrollably. "My voice?" she wrote, her letters barely legible. Dr. Thompson's smile faltered. The cyst was located near some vocal cord nerves. There might be some temporary hoarseness, but should resolve with time. Speech therapy might be helpful. Might be helpful? Temporary hoarseness? This wasn't hoarseness. This was a complete transformation, a grotesque mimicry of her former self. His explanation felt incomplete, evasive. He offered no apologies, no real reassurance, just vague promises of recovery and a dismissive pat on the arm. She sensed he was withholding information, downplaying the severity of the situation. As he left, promising to check on her later, Sarah felt a profound sense of betrayal. She had entrusted him with her health, and he had left her trapped, voiceless, and with more questions than answers. The complication felt more like a catastrophic cover-up. Lying in the hospital bed, her jaw wired shut and her voice a distorted echo, Sarah refused to accept Dr. Thompson's vague explanation. She was determined to uncover the truth, to understand exactly what had happened during that surgery. Her recovery, both physical and emotional, depended on it. The first step was obtaining her medical records. It proved to be a bureaucratic nightmare, a frustrating dance of paperwork and red tape. But Sarah, fueled by anger and desperation, persisted. She enlisted the help of her sister, Emily, a lawyer known for her tenacity and unwavering support. Emily navigated the legal maze, securing the records that Dr. Thompson seemed so reluctant to share. Once the records arrived, Sarah and Emily spent hours poring over them, dissecting every detail, every medical term. They consulted with online medical dictionaries, searching for information about jaw cysts and vocal cord nerve damage. The records were dense and technical, but they slowly began to paint a clearer, albeit disturbing, picture. The cyst, it turned out, was larger and more complex than Dr. Thompson had implied. That IT was located dangerously close to several major nerves, including those controlling speech. The surgery, according to the records, had been challenging and complicated, requiring extensive manipulation of the surrounding tissues. Armed with this new information, Sarah sought second opinions. She contacted several specialists, sending them her medical records and a written account of her experience. Many were hesitant to comment, citing concerns about legal liability. But one doctor, a renowned oral surgeon named Dr. Ramirez, agreed to examine her. He listened patiently to her garbled attempts at communication, studied her records meticulously, and offered a candid assessment. He confirmed that the cyst removal had been risky and that the nerve damage was likely more extensive than Dr. Thompson had acknowledged. He also suggested that the jaw wiring might have been unnecessarily aggressive. The road to recovery, he warned, would be long and arduous. But at least now, Sarah had a clearer understanding of the challenges she faced. With Dr. Ramirez's assessment in hand, Sarah felt a flicker of hope amidst the despair. She wasn't crazy. Her instincts about Dr. Thompson's evasiveness had been correct. But the road to understanding the complete truth was still long and winding. Further investigation into her medical records, coupled with Dr. Ramirez's insights, revealed a disturbing timeline of events. That it became clear that the discovery of the cyst during the septoplasty wasn't entirely accidental. While Dr. Thompson maintained it was previously undetected, a closer examination of preoperative scans hinted at its presence, albeit small and easily overlooked. The truth, as Sarah pieced it together, was that Dr. Thompson had likely seen the cyst on scans but had dismissed it, either due to negligence or a misjudgment of its potential impact. He had proceeded with the septoplasty, perhaps hoping the cyst wouldn't pose a problem. But during the surgery, it became clear that the cyst was more aggressive than anticipated, necessitating immediate and drastic action. The extensive manipulation mentioned in the records refer to Dr. Thompson's attempts to remove the cyst without causing permanent nerve damage. But his efforts, while perhaps well-intentioned, had ultimately failed. The proximity of the cyst to the vocal cord nerves, combined with the aggressive surgical techniques, had resulted in the devastating voice alteration. The jaw wiring, according to Dr. Ramirez, was a debatable decision. While it provided stability for healing, it may have been an overreaction, potentially exacerbating the nerve damage and prolonging the recovery process. Sarah realized that the events leading to her current predicament were a complex mix of unforeseen complications, misjudgments, and perhaps even a degree of negligence. The surgery wasn't simply a complication. It was a cascade of errors, each building upon the previous one, culminating in a life-altering outcome. The truth was painful, but it was also empowering. That it gave her a foundation upon which to build her recovery and seek justice. The truth, while empowering, did little to alleviate the daily emotional toll. The physical discomfort was constant. The throbbing ache in her jaw, the pressure of the wires, the constant drooling she couldn't control. Eating became a torturous process of blending food into a watery gruel and forcing it through the small gap between her teeth. Sleep was elusive, punctuated by nightmares and the persistent discomfort. But the physical pain was only one facet of her suffering. The communication barriers were equally debilitating. Simple conversations became monumental tasks, requiring her to write everything down or rely on garbled, frustrating attempts at speech. She felt isolated, cut off from the world. Her voice, once her primary means of connection, now a source of shame and embarrassment. The psychological impact was profound, Sarah struggled with feelings of anger, resentment, and profound sadness. She mourned the loss of her former self, the woman with a clear voice and a confident demeanor. Her reflection in the mirror was a constant reminder of what she had lost: a distorted face, a mouth bound by wires, a stranger staring back at her. She withdrew from social gatherings, avoiding friends and family, fearing their pity or, worse, their judgment. She felt like a burden, a broken version of her former self. Her self-esteem plummeted, and she began to question her worth, her identity. The altered voice, in particular, was a constant source of anxiety. She worried that people would find her repulsive, that they would be unable to understand her, that she would never be able to communicate effectively again. She felt like an imposter, trapped in a body that no longer felt like her own. The emotional weight was crushing, threatening to bury her beneath a mountain of despair. She knew she needed help, but even seeking help felt like an insurmountable obstacle. The weight of her isolation became unbearable. One evening, Emily found Sarah curled up on the couch, silently weeping, the notepad filled with angry, frustrated scribbles. Emily sat beside her, took her hand, and simply held it, offering a silent reassurance that spoke volumes. That night, Emily gently persuaded Sarah to attend a support group for individuals with chronic pain and communication disorders. Sarah was hesitant, terrified of exposing her vulnerability to strangers, but Emily insisted, promising to stay by her side. The support group proved to be a turning point. Surrounded by others who understood her struggles, Sarah felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced since the surgery. She listened to their stories, their triumphs and setbacks, and realized she wasn't alone. She found solace in their shared experiences, their empathy, and their unwavering support. She also started opening up to her friends and family, sharing her fears and frustrations. To her surprise, they responded with compassion and understanding her. Friends organized meal trains, bringing her soft, blended foods that she could easily eat. Her family took turns accompanying her to medical appointments, providing her with emotional support and practical assistance. Her parents, who initially struggled to understand the extent of her suffering, began to research vocal cord nerve damage and communication disorders. They learned sign language, so they could communicate with her more effectively. Their efforts, while initially clumsy, were deeply touching, demonstrating their unwavering love and commitment. Even old acquaintances reached out, offering words of encouragement and support. Sarah discovered that even in her darkest moments, she was surrounded by a network of people who cared about her and wanted to help. This newfound support system became her lifeline, providing her with the strength and courage to face the challenges ahead. With a solid support system in place, Sarah turned her attention to exploring treatment options. The jaw wiring was scheduled to be removed in a few weeks, but the long-term prospects for her voice remained uncertain. She was determined to regain as much of her former vocal ability as possible. That Dr. Ramirez recommended a comprehensive rehabilitation program that included speech therapy, physical therapy, and psychological counseling. The speech therapy focused on retraining her vocal cords, strengthening the weakened muscles, and exploring alternative communication techniques. The physical therapy aimed to alleviate the jaw pain and improve her range of motion. The psychological counseling helped her cope with the emotional trauma of the surgery and the ongoing challenges of her condition. Sarah also researched alternative treatments, exploring options such as acupuncture, massage therapy, and herbal remedies. She consulted with holistic healers and energy practitioners, seeking ways to promote healing and reduce stress. She was open to anything that might offer even a small improvement. She learned about surgical options for vocal cord reconstruction, but Dr. Ramirez cautioned against them. The risks were significant, and the potential benefits were uncertain. That he advised her to exhaust all other options before considering surgery. Sarah immersed herself in research, reading medical journals, attending webinars, and consulting with other patients who had experienced similar vocal cord injuries. She became an expert on her condition, learning everything she could about the anatomy of the vocal cords, the mechanisms of speech, and the latest advances in treatment. The journey was long and arduous, filled with setbacks and frustrations. But Sarah remained determined, driven by a fierce desire to reclaim her voice and her life. She knew that recovery would be a marathon, not a sprint, but she was prepared to put in the time and effort required to achieve her goals. Months into her rehabilitation, Sarah experienced a subtle but significant shift. The physical pain had lessened, the jaw wiring was long gone, and she had made progress in speech therapy, although her voice remained far from normal. But the turning point wasn't a physical breakthrough. It was an emotional one. It happened during a support group meeting that a new member, a young woman who had lost her voice due to a car accident, shared her story. She spoke with raw honesty about her struggles with communication, her feelings of isolation, and her fears about the future. As Sarah listened, she realized she was focusing on what she had lost rather than what she still had. She was so consumed by her anger and resentment that she had failed to appreciate the progress she had made, the support she had received, and the strength she had discovered within herself. That night, Sarah looked in the mirror and saw not a distorted face, but a face that had endured unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger, more resilient. She saw not a stranger, but a woman who had fought for her voice, her identity, and her life. She began to accept her new voice, not as a replacement for her old one, but as a part of her new reality. She started experimenting with different vocal techniques, finding ways to express herself more effectively, even with her limited vocal range. She also began to embrace alternative forms of communication, learning sign language and becoming proficient in written communication. She discovered that communication wasn't just about speaking. It was about connecting with others, sharing her thoughts and feelings, and building meaningful relationships. This moment of acceptance marked a turning point in her healing process. She was no longer defined by her voice, or lack thereof. She was defined by her resilience, her determination, and her unwavering spirit. Acceptance didn't mean resignation. It meant empowerment. Sarah embarked on a journey to reclaim her identity, to redefine herself in light of her new reality. She started by focusing on what she could control. She continued her speech therapy, diligently practicing her vocal exercises, experimenting with different tones and inflections. She learned to project her voice, to speak with confidence, even if her voice sounded different than before. She even gave her new voice a name, Roxy, a quirky, slightly rebellious moniker that reflected its unexpected and unconventional nature. She embraced alternative communication methods, becoming fluent in sign language and proficient in written communication. She carried a small notepad and pen with her everywhere, using it to communicate with strangers, order food in restaurants, and participate in meetings. She discovered that writing could be a powerful form of expression, allowing her to articulate her thoughts and feelings with clarity and precision. She also started to redefine her self-image. She experimented with new hairstyles, new clothing styles, and new makeup techniques, finding ways to express her personality and boost her confidence. She joined a photography class, learning to capture the beauty and resilience of the human spirit. She even started a blog, sharing her story with others and connecting with a community of individuals who had overcome similar challenges. Sarah realized that her voice wasn't the only thing that defined her. She was also a daughter, a sister, a friend, a writer, a photographer, and a survivor. She was a complex, multifaceted individual with a rich inner life and a unique perspective on the world. She had lost her old voice, but she had found a new one, a voice that was stronger, more authentic, and more meaningful than ever before. Sarah knew that her journey was far from over. While she had made significant progress, she still faced ongoing challenges. Her voice, while stronger and more controlled, would likely never be the same. She still experienced occasional pain in her jaw, and the communication barriers remained a constant source of frustration. She continued to attend speech therapy, working to refine her vocal techniques and explore new ways to express herself. She also remained active in the support group, sharing her experiences and offering encouragement to others. Dr. Ramirez remained optimistic about the potential for further improvement. He suggested exploring advanced vocal cord reconstruction techniques, but only after exhausting all other options that he emphasized the importance of patience and persistence, reminding her that healing was a gradual process. Sarah also focused on managing the emotional challenges of her condition. She continued to see a therapist, working through her feelings of anger, resentment, and loss. She learned to practice self-compassion, accepting her imperfections and celebrating her strengths. She also became an advocate for patient rights, sharing her story with medical professionals and advocating for greater transparency and accountability in the healthcare system. She wanted to ensure that others didn't have to endure the same traumatic experience. Looking back, Sarah realized that the surgery, while devastating, had also taught her valuable lessons. She had learned the importance of resilience, the power of human connection, and the importance of advocating for oneself. She had discovered a strength within herself that she never knew existed. She also learned that life is unpredictable and that even the most carefully laid plans can be derailed by unforeseen circumstances. But she had also learned that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to find hope, meaning, and purpose. Years after the surgery, Sarah had created a new normal for herself. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. She had learned to navigate the world with her altered voice and occasional jaw pain, finding peace and contentment despite the unexpected changes. Her career had taken an unexpected turn. She had left her corporate job and started her own business as a freelance writer and photographer, specializing in telling stories of resilience and hope. She found that her own experiences had given her a unique perspective and a deep empathy for others. She had also become a passionate advocate for disability rights, using her voice, Roxy, to speak out against discrimination and promote inclusivity. She served on the board of a local disability advocacy organization and regularly testified before the state legislature on issues related to healthcare and accessibility. Her relationships with her friends and family had deepened. She had learned to communicate more effectively, to listen more intently, and to appreciate the power of human connection. She had also learned to set boundaries, to prioritize her well-being, and to ask for help when she needed it. She still had moments of frustration and sadness, times when she missed her old voice and longed for the life she had before the surgery. But she had learned to accept these feelings, to acknowledge them, and to move on. She had come to realize that life wasn't about what you lost, but about what you did with what you had left. She had lost her voice, but she had gained so much more: resilience, compassion, purpose, and a deeper appreciation for the beauty and fragility of life. Her new normal was different, but it was also beautiful, meaningful, and filled with joy. She found herself again that Sarah's story is a testament to the power of the human spirit. It's a story about resilience, about overcoming adversity, and about finding hope in the darkest of times. It's a story about a woman who lost her voice, but found so much more in its place. Her journey was not easy. She faced unimaginable challenges, both physical and emotional. She endured pain, frustration, and profound loss. She was betrayed by a medical professional, and she was forced to navigate a world that wasn't always kind or understanding. But through it all, Sarah never gave up. She fought for her voice, for her identity, and for her right to live a full and meaningful life. She found strength in her support system, in her creative outlets, and in her unwavering determination. Her story is a reminder that even when life throws you a curveball, it is possible to adapt, to overcome, and to thrive. That it's a reminder that our voices, while important, are not the only things that define us, that we are also defined by our resilience, our compassion, and our ability to connect with others. If you're facing an unexpected medical challenge, know that you are not alone. There are resources available to help you navigate your journey. Reach out to your friends and family, seek professional support, and connect with others who have experienced similar challenges. Remember that healing is a process, not a destination. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and never give up hope. You are stronger than you think, and you are capable of overcoming even the most daunting obstacles. Embrace your new normal, redefine your identity, and find your voice. Even if it sounds different than before, your story matters, and your voice deserves to be heard.